We're kicking off Season 3 of Shut the Front Door with Aidan Quigley, the owner of Loftus Hall, the most haunted house in Ireland. Aidan and his brother Shane purchased Loftus Hall back in 2011 in a derelict state and have since brought it back to life. The property is fascinating, with 22 bedrooms, 63 acres of land and its own private beach. Situated on the picturesque Peninsula in County Wexford, this Georgian mansion is steeped in history and folklore. Over the years, locals have said the property is haunted by the devil and the ghost of a young woman. So what better time to release this recording than on Halloween itself? We have spoken to many guests on our podcast about their homes, but this is a conversation like no other. We hope you enjoy.
Hi.
How are you?
Very good, and yourself?
Thank you for having me to Loftus Hall.
No problem at all. Hope you enjoyed your long trip down.
I did. It was a gorgeous morning. I was blessed.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
So I'm really dying to get stuck into all the history of this amazing, spectacular home. Where should we start?
Well, I suppose the obvious place to start would be on the grand staircase, so if you want to head on in, I'll follow you.
Fantastic. Aidan, maybe share with me when you first set eyes on Loftus Hall.
Well, when I first set eyes on Loftus Hall, I was about 8 years old, and I came here with my family on a Sunday trip because where I've grown up is not far from Loftus Hall. You just go along the coastline to Banno Bay. So back then it was a hotel run by Michael and Kate Evericks, and it was known all over the county because of its stature with the legend and its history, and that's one of these, it's this area's gem as regards history. So little did I know, fast forward 30 plus years, that we would be buying Loftus Hall, not in the state that I remember it when I was an 8-year-old boy, but it had gone through a state of dilapidation and abandonment. So it was almost, I suppose, a move of the heart rather than the head to step in. We had the skill set to do what was necessary to save it. Unfortunately, not the pocket to match it, but that's the story of every one of these houses.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe share with us all of the restoration work you've done over the years.
Most of the restoration work, and I suppose given my training now, I come back from restoration to conservation work, whereas we try to maintain as much of the original fabric as is possible, but most of it is unseen. Directly above our heads, all of that plasterwork had collapsed, and the rain was clearly flowing straight in. All of this area we're standing on here, this is a temporary floor put in for a film set because under that was a very elaborate parquet flooring. A lot of the work that we've done hopefully will never be seen again because it's structural. It's to grab the fabric of the property, hold it. A lot of it's in the roof. It would be lovely to think that we could bring it all the way back to its splendour and its former glory. But now you're into big money.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, your heart and soul has gone into this project over the years.
These are committal projects. These you scratch Saturday and Sunday. All of those things are irrelevant. Time takes on a different meaning. Money takes on a different meaning. Everything has another knot on it. You're 7 days a week. You're all of that, and it is, I suppose it is a sort of a penance, but it is a labour of love, and as much as it will take away, it'll give back too. Like.
You might share with me, Aidan, the history on this foyer and the balustrade, the stairwell, who designed it, who built it, the flooring, everything. I'm fascinated by everything I'm seeing here.
Yeah, it is a fascinating room, and when we talk about the staircase, it's not just the structure of the staircase and the treads and the handrails and the balustrades and the newels. It's actually, when you look around this room, it spreads. This whole room is covered in timber panelling, in detailed pillars. When you look at the top of the pillars, you can see they even had the family members carved into the pillars. So the history from the Archbishop right along, they're all the members of the Loftus family. And it was a show of wealth, it was a show of pride. The Loftus crest, loyal till the death. You know, they were very loyal, they were very proud. this was an extraordinary expense, this staircase. It took all the finest points of craftsmanship at the time. Everything you see here is hand carved. It was hand carved in Italy. The actual timber came from Africa. It would have been floated across to Italy from Africa in 70-foot lengths, massive oak trees, 26 different types. It's a neo-Jacobean style staircase, and what you've got here is a piece of work that took 11 years from when the first trees were sailed across from Africa to Italy, and we're talking about 26 different types of oak were used here, neo-Jacobean, and it took 8 years to make it in Italy, and then a further 2.5 years between transporting and fitting it here, and it was all fitted on site. And it was done as a lure of sorts, basically a grand statement for one grand day, and that grand day was expected to be a royal proposal, because at the time Lady Jane was lady in waiting to Queen Victoria, and she was the closest confidant of Queen Victoria, and she raised her son John Henry Graham Wellington Loftus, who was the 4th Marquess of Ely, in Osborne House, in amongst Queen Victoria's daughters, and Princess Beatrice was the one that Lady Jane hoped that John Henry Graham would marry. Unfortunately, it all came undone for Lady Jane, because part of the trip, the Queen was interested to know the history of the house, and when she heard about the stories of what happened here between 1765 and 1775, she decided she wasn't going to visit, because Prince Philip had a fascination with ghost stories, and she said it'd be too much of a distraction. She didn't believe in any of it, but she wasn't going to have the inconvenience of it. So all of this investment, all of this major planning for one day was swept away by the legend.
So Aidan, this is like magnificent. When you look up, it's all about this. Well, how would you describe this? It's like a stained glass roof window, is that correct?
It's a lantern window, so its
Do you mind
purpose,
if I have a peek?
Yeah. Its purpose is to flood this area in natural light, and what we've learned over the years here is that architecture in that era was not just about how something looked, but how it worked. And everything had to work with the natural elements. So to view the room in the way the architect would have had it in his mind's eye, there's a particular time of day to view the room, there's a particular time of year to view the room. So this would have been constructed for a grand summer's day where that lovely warm light would have come through. The glass, which is 1 inch thick up there, was hand painted and then fired. So every detail here meant something, but it was all about absolutely polishing the diamond, getting every detail right, not just enough. Enough was never enough. Just keep going. How does the shadow fall, from the flutes of the banisters, the marquetry, all of those things, they all were thought out, redesigned, and then decision made. And the decision was collaborative with master craftsmen, with an architect. The whole process of building a house was a collaborative thing back then.
My goodness. And I mean, we've had some serious recent storms.
Yes.
Has any of this been damaged in any of the recent storms?
The work that we've done, previous to our arrival, this was in a state of collapse. So what we see there, that's a 46-foot long beam, and it supports a quarter of the roof weight of the entire house, and that was in severe distress.
I'm just amazed at the thought that was put into all the architraves.
Yeah.
And the door frames.
Yeah.
It's just layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
How many people would have been involved in the architecture, the planning, or the design of this?
We believe that Jane had really worked her connections well. She was a great diplomat. She was very good at getting what she wanted without maybe having to pay too much for it. So it's not recorded who the architect actually was here, but I believe it was a collaboration of those who worked on Osborne House and those who worked for the Queen were almost like in a Nixer capacity doing this.
Lady Jane sounds really interesting. I think she was a bit of an architect
She was, yeah, and she was an architect in a lot of ways, I suppose. Her marriage was probably not what she would have preferred, because it was almost an arranged marriage, and she wouldn't have spent a lot of time with her husband. He would have been looking after state affairs while she kept her court position with Queen Victoria. But you could see from her family's connections in London and the society she grew up in, she was a woman who wanted to get to the top of that society, you know, and she had the skills, the diplomatic skills, the connections as we know, and she just didn't have that look that she needed for it all to come together.
So Aidan, what is going on behind this door?
Well, behind this door, when this was originally done, this was the south-facing wing of the house.
Okay.
So this would have been the prime location. If you're coming here on your holidays, this is where you would want to stay.
Okay.
In most recent times, it's developed another sort of a look to it because it was part of the set of The Lodgers that's filmed here. And it's referred to now as the Devil's Bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Okay, it certainly looks like he was there already.
Yeah, it does. But as you're passing through, you'd probably have picked up on the detail of the carving on the doors.
Incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's
and how they join them up. Like, I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah,
it's really interesting, isn't it?
A lot of, I suppose, what fed into it too, there's a deep connection with Masonic architecture, and even with, if you track the history of how the stonemasons evolved from the Knights Templars, it's all connected in this house. It's actually portrayed in the floor that you walked in on originally, on the tile floor. So you've got all the levels of the Masons and the Templars. It's a really intricate piece of work that, and this is all carried throughout the house. You know, the feathers are not an accident, that always displayed wealth. So it was a grand statement of, look how rich we are, we're so rich. This is Kardashian style stuff here now, of the Victorian time. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Well, let's have a look.
Yeah.
I'll stand behind you
Okay,
this time. I'm
I'll
not
lead the way
going
in
before
here,
you. Tell me about what you were talking about earlier, how when families would come here, they would come with all of their staff. They were never actually alone.
No. So it was a travelling party of people, and depending on who they were meeting, and so was it a quick trip just out of the city, or was this where you were heading for your summer vacation? And that could have been a month, 2 months, and if so, you would have brought all of your household staff with you. And you can see the doors here on either side of this room. They would have fed into adjoining rooms where staff would have been there to wait on Her Ladyship, His Lordship in here. We're talking about a time where people did nothing for themselves. Right. So they had to be brushed, dressed, wiped down, whatever they needed.
Like horses.
They needed staff to do that. It was a weird sort of dynamic, the way people lived amongst each other. But that was the hierarchy system and the peerage system, where one served the other.
I have to say, this room actually does feel very cold.
It is, yeah,
I don't know if it's the room or...
Yeah, well, maybe the two coffins here might be feeding into that.
I might just, we might move out if you don't mind.
No problem.
I'll stick to the architraves and the stairwell. So if you could just share with me a little bit about the detail of the mosaic in this hallway. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is a fascinating example of mosaic flooring. So it was laid by Italian craftsmen. It was actually manufactured and laid, totally bespoke floor. There's a lot of stories behind this floor as to what is its significance, what's its message, what's its hidden message, what's hidden under the floor. Because we're standing on a floor now that's not on solid ground. Underneath it, there's a series of timber works and tassel walls, so it's actually hollow, which is unfortunately a problem, as the floor is in a state of collapse. If you can look across it, you may see little sections where the tiles rise up. And
Oh yeah.
it's a problem when you have a lot of visitors coming to the house, because you put an incredible amount of weight when you bring a group of people in here onto the floor, and through different times of the year it's under different atmospheric pressures, like different moisture, and that can all affect it. But yeah, a lot of the references are pointing back to the Knights Templars, to the different orders of the stonemasons, the Order of St. Patrick, the Order of the Thistle. It's all in this floor in some level, so it's
Telling a story.
It is telling a story, you know.
Now, what is happening behind here?
Well, it's not about what is happening, but what did happen behind
I'd love
here.
to know. Please
Yeah.
tell us.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to walk across that threshold
Okay.
of your own free will.
Okay, you're going to come with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Aidan, chat me through the history of this room.
This room probably has the darkest history in the house, and it's a room, I suppose when you look around it, first what grabs you is so much going on in the detail in the room.
Quite cold in this, this doorway.
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid that.
But
Standing
you're overcome almost with all detail. They've brought it to a point where they've nearly gone too far, but just about stopped before they were adding too much to the room. You can see the cast skirtings, and this was where the heating would have blown into this room. So it would have been a very comfortable room, and would have been a room where the family would have sat in the evening. If they weren't entertaining a large crowd, which would have been done at the far side of the house in the ballroom, it would have been here. And it was in this very room where they sat playing a game of cards one October night, and it was a horrible night on the peninsula. The wind and rain was just howling and swirling around. And
coming in from this
coming
side.
in, yeah, and a light would have been shining out through that window from candles here on the table where the family sat, and they weren't aware that, coincidentally, a ship lost its way here last night, and a very same thing happened back then in 1765, and that ship managed to dock in Slade Harbour. It was a little harbour just down the road, but there was only one person on it, and he stepped off of that ship and he procured a horse for himself and made his way towards here, towards this very window where he could see the light, and he knocked on the door. The butler answered the door, and in front of him was a tall, dark, handsome man. Charles Tottenham was delighted to have somebody visit the house, and especially someone who he perceived to be well-travelled, well-heeled gentleman, and he invited him in to sit at the table and play cards. And on that particular night, Lady Anne sat here. Beside her was her father and her stepmother, who was only a year older than her. Her own mother had died tragically 10 years previous, and a couple who were joined the family for company that night. But throughout the course of the night, this man was a deft hand at cards, and he was winning every hand. And at one stage, he went to call a hand, and Lady Anne only had 2 cards. So she bent down under the table to see had she dropped the card, and she shrieked in horror when she saw that he hadn't the feet of a normal man, he had the feet of a goat. And she fell into a catatonic state. When he realised he had been discovered, he burst into a fiery brawl and left, shrieking at everybody in the house through the ceiling. And it is said that to this day, that ceiling cannot be repaired.
Wow. And there was witnesses to that happening?
No, there was, yeah, and it's a recorded event, and it was actually recorded by the Cork Examiner, which, as we spoke about, Lady Jane read that recorded event to Queen Victoria, and that was what undone her plan for the house. So every bit of trouble in this house keeps coming back to one person.
And do we have any idea where they were situated exactly? Can you?
Well,
Can
we
you
have
imagine
placed the table where we believe it would be, you know, because you can see the fireplace behind us.
Yeah.
It's an overside sized fireplace for
Yeah.
the room.
Yeah.
So when this thing would have been burning hot, it would have been actually too hot to stay around.
Yeah.
So the table would have moved out away,
Yeah.
just where it was warm and nice
Yeah.
and warm, but not getting scorched
Yeah,
by
and
the
away
fire.
from the two doors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's the spot we believe the table to be situated on that night.
And you haven't been able to repair that. You've had various different people in to look at that, and you just can't repair it.
There's a lot of other rooms in the house I'll repair before I attempt to repair this
Yeah.
one. You know, it's
Yeah.
believed to be just so much bad luck here. So, yeah.
Nice,
yeah,
great,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we won't hang around
No,
for too
no,
long in this
no.
room, but I must say that the floors are beautiful.
Yeah, and it's remarkable how they've stood up.
I know.
You know, it's
I can't believe they're the original
yeah,
floors.
yeah,
I mean, they look absolutely untouched.
yeah, yeah. And we haven't done anything with these floors, whereas the floor in the morning room has benefited from a couple of years of bringing it back with linseed oil and paraffin.
Yeah.
This one is as raw as the day we came in.
It's
Yeah,
incredible.
so yeah, it just goes to show you the quality of the timber, and I suppose the fact that it is on the tassel floor, that it's up
Yes.
off the ground.
Yeah, lovely bordered edge.
Yeah,
Absolutely every detail in this house
Mhm.
has been considered.
yes,
I mean, from every room that we've walked through, I just can't believe the level of detail
Yeah.
and thought that must have gone
Mhm,
into every single space.
and expense.
It's incredible.
Mm, yeah.
I mean, where do you even begin to start restoring something like this? I can't even imagine.
Recording before restoring, you know, and that's to me the most important thing. But the most important thing is before you touch anything, photograph it, scan it, record it as much as you can, because once you move it, you've changed history.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Thank you, Aidan. I think we'll move out of here if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you. So, Aidan, talk to me about the most haunted room in the house.
Well, we're actually right beside it now, so
Okay.
there's no better place to talk about it than
Why
in it.
is this the most haunted room in the house?
Well, this room is known as the Tapestry Room.
Okay.
From an architectural point of view, you'll know why it's Tapestry Room when we go in, because it's
Okay.
got the highest ceilings in the whole
Oh,
house.
wow.
But it has a very tragic history to it.
Okay.
So this was the room that Lady Anne, directly after her discovery under the card room table, she basically lost her mind, and she was put away into this room for the rest of her life. It was the room she died in. It was the room that when the undertakers came to remove her, they couldn't straighten her body. She was in a seated position with her knees up. So they actually built a coffin around her, and that coffin is only a few miles away in the family crypt in Featherton-Sea, and people broke into the crypt about 20 years ago and took photographs of the coffin. It's still there, and it's a very oddly shaped coffin.
Poor girl.
Yeah,
She spent how many years in this room?
10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I
There is a horrific part of the story where in 1884 it's recorded that when they opened up this wall here around the fireplace, that they discovered the skeletal remains of an infant. So part of the thing and part of the story the local people would talk about is that the real reason they wanted to keep people away from this house because there was something else had happened between Lady Anne and this dark stranger which left her in a compromised position that didn't suit the family. So she had to be locked away. That's
Terrible.
you know, it's a terrible idea to think of.
Yeah. And she would have looked out at the sea or the view here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And all those windows are boarded up, obviously.
they're all boarded up.
But
at the
they're
moment,
all the original.
yeah.
Everything. So
Yeah.
can we have a little peek?
Yeah, can of
Yeah.
course. There's not too many people brave enough to look behind that curtain, but
Will I?
yeah,
I'm afraid. What's behind it? Nothing.
who knows?
Okay. Nothing. But I would just like to get in and have a look.
Yeah, let
So
me hold
she-
back the curtain for you there.
So she would have been right
Yeah.
up close.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Because of what happened here, they couldn't even get the staff to come back to work in the house because basically they were very superstitious, mainly Catholic, 99% Catholic, and they had heard of this incident with the devil visiting the house, so they would rather starve up in the up in the village of Derelict and come back here. And the only way that the Tottenham family could get the staff to come back to work, they brought in a priest, Father Thomas Broaders. And this is the penal time in Ireland, so it was illegal to practice as a Catholic priest and say Mass. But they asked him here to do an exorcism. And it is recorded within the Catholic records that Father Broaders came here and performed an exorcism. And through his recording of it, he said he was predominantly successful in banishing the demons out of this house, except for this room. He said this was the one room he couldn't clear.
I must say, when we were entering this room, I tried taking a video of it with my own personal phone. About 15 times it just crashed.
Yeah. You don't have to say much in this room. This room will speak to every individual that comes into it, you know, and it'll speak almost through your body. You'll feel it when you walk into this room. And, you know, people say, well, do you need to stage this? You don't have to stage anything in this room because you got it when you walked in.
Yeah, definitely. There is a feeling. Poor girl.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
It is very sad.
I think the whole story is so sad.
It is, it is, and it's what makes it really sad. I think what hits it to people when they are here. There's so much beautiful stuff in this house, but then there's just so much sadness.
It's just, that's all I feel. I feel like it's this magnificent home that's been totally abandoned. And it was once a really happy, proud place. Poor girl. We're leaving.
Yes, we'll leave.
Lady Anne's room.
Lady Anne's room.
And we're entering what room now?
We're entering the chapel now, but it was originally, when it was built, this would have been the ballroom.
Okay.
And where society events would have happened in the house.
Okay. Right, yeah, wow, it definitely feels like an important room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the natural light would have been coming in here, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
They would have followed
So,
the light.
like that, yes, the family would have followed the light, and you would have had some spectacular sunsets over Dunmore East here. So all of these windows would have opened up for that.
Yeah.
And you actually had a little doorway here that led you out onto where the car park is now. Would have been a garden and a stepped garden. So you know, it was all for relaxing, for small social events, not the grandeur of the city, but more intimate meetings with people and that sort of thing. And like you can see yourself again, we're into some very high level of detail on the floors here. The border on that one is quite exquisite.
And where would the floors have come from?
All from Italy as well.
Italy as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And you said they would have spent up to 7 years fitting these floors.
Yeah, yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. And when it became a convent, this became basically the church for the local area. Okay. And they took out that window and created a doorway with a little portico off it, and that's where the locals arrived in. And then towards the latter years, it wasn't used as a church, and the nuns used it. And you can actually see where they chopped firewood here on the floor for the fire. Yeah. You know, so in one way, you'd say that's a travesty, but another way, that's a piece of history right there.
Definitely.
So, you know, the last days of the nuns, trying to keep themselves warm in this big old house. Yeah.
And what happened to the last owners previous to you?
They had great plans for it to be a boutique hotel, and they were well on the way then. But then Mikey died. He died here in the hotel, and after that, his wife Kay, she carried on the business for a number of years, but it didn't happen. It just basically, when we arrived here, there was a table set. And it was set with all the crockery and cutlery, and it was like a scene from Lady Havisham's. It had been set, we believe, for 12 years for a group that never came, and that was
so sad.
Yeah. There's an incredible amount of sadness in this place.
You can sense it.
Yeah.
And missed opportunities. It feels kind of like there's this feeling of disappointment in the house.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean. Can I dare I ask how much money you've invested in this house so far?
I thankfully don't know, because it's been everything. So
everything.
How do you weigh everything? You know, it's everything, and it's everyday everything, and that is it. Yeah.
I think this house chose you.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll choose someone else now as well.
Like, I think this house chose you.
Yeah, because I'm about ready to leave the house.
Yeah.
through the modest way, through the servants' hallway rather than the front door. And you know, I have absolutely enjoyed my time here in the house. It's pushed me beyond boundaries that I didn't even think I'd ever consider. Like,
You think you'll continue with restoration?
yeah, I think I'm caught up in old properties. I can't get away from them.
Yeah, it's addictive.
Yeah, it is. And from someone who built a lot of new properties, I just have no love for that. It's mining into these, and you know, they just grab you, drag you in. And
you were telling me earlier that you stayed in this house on your own for 6 months.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Yeah. It's born out of necessity as well. Anything is possible with necessity. So we couldn't insure it. No insurance company would insure it, and yeah, that was a challenge. It was that was an interesting 6 months.
And did you ever hear anything during the night, or did you have any personal experiences?
The thing about a house like this, every night you're going to hear something, and you're going to hear something different, or you're going to hear the repeat of something, because these things move, they creak, they groan, they move, and then you'll hear something and you'll say, I haven't heard that before, or what was that, or it's the senses and the feelings you'll get, like, you know, in different areas of the house now I'll have different sort of feelings that I get. Some people seem to see things very vividly or hear things, and then like we have a lot of senses that we don't use anymore. And one of them is that your awareness of your own energy field around you and what's making an impression on that. And if we're to boil it all back to the Big Bang and that we are just energy, well then it's more logical that what these paranormal experiences are is old energy meeting new energy, and that interface between them.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, and that to me is to be viewed as a positive rather than a negative.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've always said to people, you never open the paper and read a headline that a ghost has bludgeoned 10 people to death. You know, it's our innate fear of what we don't understand.
Of the unknown, fear of the unknown.
But I think if we realise that we're not meant to understand and let it go, the journey is different.
Yeah. Interesting. Gosh, you're a brave man. You might just take me through the hallway.
Yeah.
Aidan, thank you so much for walking me around and showing me around Loftus Hall. It's been absolutely fascinating. It's such a magnificent home.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. You know, sometimes when you're here this long, you don't stop and appreciate what's around you, and it's nice when somebody's seen it from the first time, and you can sort of think back. Well, yeah, I remember looking at that the first time, and it's a gorgeous place.
Yeah,
albeit a sad place. Yeah, but it is a gorgeous.
It's really impressive. I mean, I know that there has been history and stories and all the folklore, but apart from that, it's just really an exceptionally beautiful home.
It is. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing it with me.
No, you're welcome.
Take care.
Thank you.